think the Browns might have just stamped themselves as the best defense in the NFL after this week. You go in, you've got no Deshaun Watson, you've had no Nick Chubb for a few weeks now. Doesn't matter. This defense is insane. I believe there was a point it was right before the final drive for the 49ers. So every drive in the second half up until that point, they had 11 yards in the second half up until that final drive. And we've seen this offense. I mean, we just talked about
That's
Miami.
actually disgusting.
I know.
Dude.
I know. I could
Oh.
not believe that. Like, PJ Walker put together 100 yards against a good San Francisco defense, and San Francisco couldn't even muster that. Now, they do lose Christian McCaffrey, I believe, midway into this game, so they were running with Jordan Mason for a lot of that. And Deebo Samuel, also a little questionable, but 11 yards, a first down, like, that's it.
And this is a different conversation, but that 49ers team shouldn't be excused for that loss. Like, they still have Brandon Ayuk. You still have George Kittle. Trent Williams was back into the game at that point, so you have a fully healthy offensive line. It was just that Browns defense, like you're talking about.
Yeah, and look, I am fully aware that if Jake Moody makes a very makeable NFL kick, we're having a different conversation right now. But I'm not sure if we should be, because what the Browns did on Sunday, should not be changed by the result of one kick. They still put together a phenomenal defensive performance to get them to that point where, walking in with PJ Walker and Jerome Ford as your quarterback and running back when you were supposed to have Deshaun Watson and Nick Chubb heading into the season, and going in and beating this San Francisco team that we just talked about Miami. We were talking about San Francisco, maybe not as high, but probably the second best offense in the NFL, mixed with one of the best defenses in the NFL in San Francisco. To not get, really anything, especially in the second half. I mean, the first drive for San Francisco, I believe they scored. They walked right down the field. But after that, it was just a whole lot of nothing. They had trouble getting Ayuk the ball. He had I think he had 11 targets, only 4 catches in this game. So that's a little concerning. But on the Brown, obviously, let's talk about the Brown side. I mean, they're allowing the least yardage per game in the NFL. They're averaging, I believe, just over or just under 200 yards per game, or allowing that. Yeah, just over 200.4 yards per game. They're only allowing 15 points per game. Yards per play, they're the number one in the NFL. They're playing fantastic, and I talked about this in week 1 about how those additions that they made, Zadarius Smith, Dalvin Tomlinson, to help Myles Garrett out, as he's been that number one guy, and then they can bring 2 to 3 guys onto his side over the last few years because of how dominant he is and how there was not a whole lot else there to impact him or impact the game. Now they don't have that, and he can kind of get single coverage a lot more, and we see how dominant he is with single coverage. I just think this is a huge win for Cleveland. The Deshaun Watson status is still up in the air. I know that I saw a report after the game that he may even miss more time with an injury.
PJ Walker was slinging that thing. I will say,
he
was slinging that thing.
He was playing he was in the game. I saw him play.
Okay. What was his PFF grade?
I'm interested to see. Let's see. Was it?
Let's
talk or
a
something.
battle at who can get there first.
Oh, it was bad. Oh my god, it was really bad. What were you talking, dude? What are you talking about?
I saw a couple plays where it looked like he threw a good football. I was talking out of
Have you seen it? Have you seen it, or do you want me to say it?
I'll just
26.4.
Okay.
Worst of the season of anybody that took snaps.
What was DTR's last week?
Not too much higher. 38.4.
Wow.
So the Browns might have a bit of a problem over the next few weeks, especially with they've already caught their bye. And again, you don't have Nick Chubb to lean on. If Deshaun Watson gets hurt with Nick Chubb still here, you can lean on that.
Kareem Hunt scored a touchdown on Sunday.
Ooh. Oh, okay. So I'll tell you this Browns defense going to have to be the best in the NFL, or if not just one of the best in the NFL for the remainder of this season, for them to have a chance in this AFC that we seeing. It's starting to thin out a little bit. That's one thing that we talked about at the beginning of the season, where we were like, oh, there's 8 of our top 10 teams are in the AFC, not even including the Jags, who, look like they're going to be towards the top of their division still. The Jets get moved to the back of that conversation, but you've got to stay afloat somehow without Watson to, this is everybody's jumping on top of each other in this conference right now, and if they see a Deshaun Watson injury, they can pounce on that. It could get rough quick here. Let's go take a look at their schedule. So, after San Francisco, mildly difficult schedule. They got Indy next week, who's been feisty. They've got Seattle, both those games on the road. Then they get Arizona. Then they get Ravens, Steelers, Broncos. It's actually not a wow. They actually have a really nice schedule. So after the Broncos, they get Rams, Jags, Bears, Texans, Jets,
Should I whisper
Bengals.
this?
Go ahead.
I might have to whisper this. Can the Browns win this division?
So
without Deshaun Watson and Nick Chubb?
No. This defense is great. Don't get me wrong. My takeaway is that they have the best defense in the NFL because they're playing like it right now. They played like it on Sunday. But
they beat the best team in the NFL without Deshaun Watson and Nick Chubb.
They also got outscored 27-3 2 weeks ago without Deshaun Watson, or maybe with Deshaun Watson.
No, DTR.
Yeah, that was DTR. That was the DTR week. Without Deshaun Watson and Nick Chubb by the team in this division that I think they're leading the division right now, probably the division favorite. So I think it's going to be more of a wild card situation. Again, this is all dependent on Deshaun Watson's health. If he comes back next week, we're talking about, yes, they definitely could with this defense. The run game hasn't been abysmal with Jerome Ford. It just hasn't been as dominant without Nick Chubb. But if you take the passing game away from that, I mean, at the end of the day, the Browns offense only scored, 12 points? So that's kind of the tough discussion. I know that we're kind of walking away from the Browns having the best defense and turning this into a much more pessimistic conversation. What was supposed to be an optimistic topic.
But the only reason we're talking about other things is because we know that this defense is one of the best in the league, and that's a staple.
That's the thing, is like, this is not a variable unit. Like, you're not worried about this. Exactly. They're going to play at a top 5 to top 3 level on a week-to-week basis, regardless of who they're playing. We saw that this week against the San Francisco 49ers, which were widely regarded to be one of the 2 or 3 best offenses in the NFL. Could have just been having an off day, but I really think the Browns were able to not crack a code per se, but get pressure on Brock Purdy, put Myles Garrett on the side that Trent Williams isn't on, and you should be fine. The offense is the issue. That's what you're scared about. If Watson's like missing 5-6 weeks, something that's 5 to 6 more weeks, unfortunately, this defense might go to waste. I don't see a world in which PJ Walker and Jerome Ford can. I mean, even looking at those next 6, you'd have to win 3 of those to feel confident, and it's doable for sure. But I think there are gonna be weeks where this offense with no Chubb, with no Watson, puts up 6 points, and there's not a whole lot the defense can do about that. There just isn't. But overall, again, let's end this on a positive note, man. Yeah. They're 3-2 because they just beat what we had to be the best team in football, and defense is playing fantastic. Myles Garrett right in it for Defensive Player of the Year, and if Watson can get back, we're talking about a team that, you said it without, but definitely with Watson, they can compete for this division easily.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Last thing I'll add to that whole thing is that I think Jim Schwartz has made the huge difference in this defense. I mean, he, former head coach in this league, former defensive coordinator on the Philly team that went to the Super Bowl, not only went to the Super Bowl, but won the Super Bowl. So, and that defense was the staple of that team because if you can recall, Nick Foles was the quarterback of that Philadelphia Eagles squad. Jim Schwartz, and they talked about a lot at the beginning of the season about how he's given a lot of energy to this defense. Like, he's been like, you guys, I want you celebrating after every single play that you make as a team. And that's like a very Nathaniel Hackett type concept, which I thought was a little weird. But Jim Schwartz, coming from Jim Schwartz, a very respectable head coach, done this for a long time. Gotta love it. So I think he's made a huge difference on this defense.
It's cool when he does it, not when Nathaniel Hackett does it. But one last note before we move on.
Poor Nathaniel Hackett can't escape all the criticism. Just a low blow. My bad. Continue.
Jim Schwartz, 8-1. Jim Schwartz defense is 8-1 against Kyle Shanahan coached offenses. Can't imagine that there's anybody in the NFL that has a better record against Kyle Shanahan's offenses from the Atlanta years to now. Can't imagine that there's any coach that has a better record than that.
That's
8-1.
actually insane. That's actually insane against the guy who's probably second, if not third, to McVay, if not fourth.
They've only scored over 20 points once.
Wow, dude. Kyle Shanahan cannot escape Jim Schwartz. He lives rent-free inside his head.